Namaste. Good evening. Good morning. We are still working in the cosmic illusion. I think we have arrived at a section of which Sri Aurobindo is pursuing dream analogy, whether we can use the nature of dreams as an analog to what is a real or unreal world. To go back to the start of the chapter, he's cited the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, in which not simply the waking state, but the dream state and the deep sleep state are described as states of the self, of a real being. Sri Aurobindo is now considering whether this might all be an illusion. Are any of these states real? Is there a reality behind? And he is, without precisely naming the Mayavada of Advaita philosophy, or Shankara by name, he is taking up the germ of their argument. So far, our context is that both self and cosmos are real. That when we are sleeping, we have contact with what he calls a subliminal realm of being, which is really a junction between the higher consciousness as it descends out of Satchitananda and involves into the universe, and then there's a consequent re-emergence of that involved consciousness through evolutionary power and expression of forms and that. And the subliminal worlds which are accessible to us are that meeting point between involution and evolution, lying behind the screen of our consciousness. Subliminal is a word which ordinarily would mean to us below the line of our consciousness. But for Sri Aurobindo, that's not quite fully descriptive. It is behind our waking consciousness. And that subliminal world that is our own subjective being reveals an inner mind, an inner life force, and even a subtler physical. At the base of that subliminal is what he calls the subconscious, or the subconscient. So there's this great range of inner being which leads upwards to the superconscient, and below into the subconscient, which itself lapses into an originating inconscience from which our universe manifests. So it is a complex picture, something that is very rich to our inner experience and informs our inner experience, especially as we retire inward and leave external forms behind, whether that is through waking effort, trance, or, of course, in sleep, in dream states. So he's in the middle of this argument as we take it up here. Our waking state, he writes, is unaware of its connection with the subliminal being, although it receives from it, but without any knowledge of the place of origin, the inspirations, intuitions, ideas, will suggestions, sense suggestions, urges to action that rise from below or from behind our limited surface existence. Pardon me. Sleep, like trance, opens the gate of the subliminal to us. For in sleep, as in trance, we retire behind the veil of the limited waking personality, and it is behind this veil that the subliminal has its existence. But we receive the records of our sleep experience through dream, and in dream figures, and not in that condition which might be called an inner waking, and which is the most accessible form of the trance state, nor through the supernormal clarities of vision and other more luminous and concrete ways of communication developed by the inner subliminal cognition when it gets into habitual or occasional conscious connection with our waking self. There are many corridors here, not simply what we commonly call lucid sleep now. The subliminal, with the subconscious and as an annex of itself, that means something which is an attachment to tie or add to. The subliminal with the subconscious as an annex of itself, for the subconscious is also part of the behind the veil entity, is the seer of inner things and of supraphysical experiences. The surface subconscious is only a transcriber, so there's active agency in our subliminal part of being. What might be hidden to our outer personality is an active agent inwardly. Note also that the subconscious is beneath the subliminal. He states it again. It is for this reason that the Upanishad describes the subliminal being as the dream self, Brihadaranyaka 4:3-7, because it is normally in dreams, visions, absorbed states of inner experience that we enter into and are part of its experiences, just as it describes the superconscient as the sleep self, Sushupta, because normally all mental or sensory experiences cease when we enter this superconscience. We blank out. For in the deeper trance into which the touch of the superconscient plunges our mentality, no record from it or transcript of its contents can normally reach us. It is only by an especial or an unusual development in a supernormal condition or through a break or rift in our confined normality that we can be on the surface conscious of the contacts or messages of the superconscience. But in spite of these figurative names of dream state and sleep state, the field of both these states of consciousness was clearly regarded as a field of reality, no less than that of the waking state in which our movements of perceptive consciousness are a record or transcript of physical things and of our contacts with the physical universe. And I think any fair reading of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad reveals that, despite Shankara's gloss upon it. No doubt, all the three states can be classed as parts of an illusion. Our experiences then can be ranked together as constructions of an illusory consciousness, our waking state no less illusory than our dream state or sleep state, since the only true truth or real reality is the incommunicable self or one existence, Atman, Advaita, which is the fourth state of the self described by the Vedanta. But it is equally possible to regard and rank them together as three different orders of one reality, or as three states of consciousness in which is embodied our contact with three different grades of self-experience and world experience. When he was speaking about can be regarded as parts of an illusion, this is not actually his view, obviously. He's speaking in rather a tongue-in-cheek and ironic way. Note at the end, three different grades of self-experience and world experience, because self and world, microcosm and macrocosm, are part of a real order. A transcendence expresses itself universally and expresses itself personally and individually. What is true in the universe is true in the individual. What is true in the individual is true also in the universe. There is an intercourse between the two. If this, he writes, is a true account of dream experience, that is, dreams are then an order of reality. If this is a true account of dream experience, dreams can no longer be classed as a mere unreal figure of unreal things, temporarily imposed upon our half-unconsciousness as a reality. The analogy therefore fails, even as an illustrative support for the theory of the cosmic illusion. It may be said, however, that our dreams are not themselves realities, but only a transcript of reality, a system of symbol images, and our waking experience of the universe is similarly not a reality, but only a transcript of reality, a series or collection of symbol images. And again, a transcript literally means like a written copy. Let's just say it means a copy. So these symbol images, etc., are copies. It is quite true that primarily we see the physical universe only through a system of images impressed or imposed on our senses, and so far the contention is justified. It may also be admitted that in a certain sense and from one viewpoint, our experiences and activities can be considered as symbols of a truth which our lives are trying to express, but at present only with a partial success and an imperfect coherence. If that were all, life might be described as a dream experience of self and things in the consciousness of the infinite. So note what he's describing here. To put it into somewhat different terminology, is a witness, a percipient, an object, the thing which is formed, and a perception of the object. And that perception would be the symbol image in this argument. To return to his point, but although our primary evidence of the objects of the universe consists of a structure of sense images, these are completed, validated, set in order by an automatic intuition in the consciousness which immediately relates the image with the thing imaged and gets the tangible experience of the object, so that we are not merely regarding or reading a translation or sense transcript of the reality, but looking through the sense image to the reality. This adequacy is amplified too by the action of a reason which fathoms and understands the law of things sensed and can observe scrupulously the sense transcript and correct its errors. So, he's saying that there is an intuition operative in our consciousness which grasps the real experience of an object via image or sense form, and then the reason comes along and enhances, corrects, and validates what the intuition grasps. Therefore, we may conclude, he writes, that we experience a real universe through our imaged sense transcript by the aid of the intuition and the reason, an intuition which gives us the touch of things, and a reason which investigates their truth by its conceptive knowledge. But we must note also that even if our image view of the universe, our sense transcript, is a system of symbol images and not an exact reproduction or transcription, a literal translation, still a symbol is a notation of something that is a transcript of realities. So in other words, even if we're one removed from the thing in itself, the Ding an sich, we are still experiencing a reality by association, by transference, as it were. We can, in a sense, know it through our intuition and validate it through the force of reason, through our conceptive knowledge. So all is based upon a reality. Fundamentally, again, for Sri Aurobindo, who is a realist, there is a real behind the image seen. Even if our images are incorrect, what they endeavor to image are realities, not illusions. When we see a tree or a stone or an animal, it is not a non-existent figure, a hallucination that we are seeing. We may not be sure that the image is exact. We may concede that other sense might very well see it otherwise. But still, there is something there that justifies the image, something with which it has more or less correspondence. But in the theory of illusion, the only reality is an indeterminable, featureless, pure existence, Brahman, and there is no possibility of its being translated or mistranslated into a system of symbol figures, for that could only be if this existence had some determinate contents or some unmanifested truths of its being which could be transcribed into the forms or names given to them by our consciousness. A pure, indeterminable cannot be rendered by a transcript, a multitude of representative differentiae, a crowd of symbols or images, for there is in it only a pure identity. There is nothing to transcribe, nothing to symbolize, nothing to change, nothing to image. Therefore, the dream analogy fails us altogether and is better put out of the way. It can always be used as a vivid metaphor of a certain attitude our mind can take towards its experiences, but it has no value for a metaphysical inquiry into the reality and fundamental significances or the origin of existence. So, put simply, the dream analogy fails the illusionist because it relies on determinations arising out of the indeterminate, an impossibility. This is a similar problem that Parmenides faced in Greek philosophy. So he rejects Shankara's forceful analogy in his Bhashya with this. And now we proceed from the dream to hallucination. If we take up the analogy of hallucination, is the world a hallucination, in other words, we find it hardly more helpful for a true understanding of the theory of cosmic illusion than the dream analogy. Hallucinations are of two kinds, mental or ideative, and visual or in some way sensory. When we see an image of things, where those things are not, it is an erroneous construction of the senses, a visual hallucination. When we take for an objective fact a thing which is a subjective structure of the mind, a constructive mental error, or an objectivized imagination, or a misplaced mental image, it is a mental hallucination. An example of the first is the mirage. An example of the second is the classic instance of a rope taken for a snake. In passing, we may note that there are many things called hallucinations, which are not really that, but symbol images sent up from the subliminal, or experiences in which the subliminal consciousness or sense comes to the surface and puts us into contact with supraphysical realities. Thus, the cosmic consciousness, which is our entry by a breaking down of our mental limitations into the sense of a vast reality, has been classed, even in admitting it, as a hallucination. This is an aside he makes just to give substance to the much that is there in a psychology which plumbs the depths of the subliminal. Back to his argument. But, taking only the common hallucination, mental or visual, we observe that it seems to be at first sight a true example of what is called imposition in the philosophic theory. This is the principal argument of Mayavada. It is the placement of an unreal figure of things on a reality, of a mirage upon the bare desert air, of the figure of a non-present snake on the present and real rope. The world, we may contend, as do the Mayavadins, is such a hallucination, an imposition of a non-existent, unreal figure of things on the bare, ever-present soul reality of the Brahman. But then we note that in each case, the hallucination, the false image, is not of something quite non-existent. It is an image of something existent and real, but not present in the place on which it has been imposed by the mind's error or by a sense error. This is critically important. A mirage is the image of a city, an oasis, running water, or of other absent things. And if these things did not exist, the false image of them, whether raised up by the mind or reflected in the desert air, would not be there to delude the mind with a false sense of reality. A snake exists, and its existence and form are known to the victim of the momentary hallucination. If it had not been so, the delusion would not have been created, for it is a form resemblance of the seen reality to another reality previously known elsewhere that is the origin of the error. The analogy, therefore, is unhelpful. It would be valid only if our image of the universe were a falsity reflecting a true universe which is not here but elsewhere, or else if it were a false imagined manifestation of the reality replacing in the mind or covering with its distorted resemblance a true manifestation. But here, the world is a non-existent form of things, an illusory construction imposed on the bare reality, on the sole existent, which is forever empty of things and formless. There would be a true analogy only if our vision constructed in the void air of the desert a figure of things that exist nowhere, or else if it imposed on a bare ground both rope and snake and other figures that equally existed nowhere. And this Shankara does not contend. So the fact that the analogy rests and depends upon things which have already been real and substantiated in our experience means that they are inapplicable and unallowable in this logical effort. It is clear that in this analogy, two quite different kinds of illusion, not illustrative of each other, are mistakenly put together as if they were identical in nature. All mental or sense hallucinations are really misrepresentations or misplacements or impossible combinations or false developments of things that are in themselves existent or possible or in some way within or allied to the province of the real. All mental errors and illusions are the result of an ignorance which miscombines its data or proceeds falsely upon a previous or present or possible content of knowledge. Remember, Sri Aurobindo has never denied that there is a cosmic ignorance. In fact, it is the divine's ignoring of itself which leads to the vast inclusion of all of its secrets in the inconscient through the process of involution. We ignore what we are and rediscover what we are when we cast off that ignorance. This is the process of cosmic development. This he affirms. He does not deny cosmic ignorance. But, he continues, the cosmic illusion has no basis of actuality. It is an original and all-originating illusion. It imposes names, figures, happenings that are pure inventions on a reality in which there never were and never will be any happenings, names, or figures. So this becomes an absurd hypothesis, and the absolute appears to be rather hapless. The analogy of mental hallucination would only be applicable if we admit a Brahman without names, forms, or relations, and a world of names, forms, and relations as equal realities imposed one upon the other. The rope in the place of the snake, or the snake in the place of the rope, an attribution it might be of the activities of the saguna to the quiescence of the nirguna, but if both are real, both must be either separate aspects of the reality or coordinate aspects, positive and negative poles of the one existence. Any error or confusion of mind between them would not be a creative cosmic illusion, but only a wrong perception of realities, a wrong relation created by the ignorance. So, this might be the role of the Maya, but it is not an illusory universe. Excuse me for a moment. If we scrutinize other illustrations or analogies that are offered to us for a better understanding of the operation of Maya, we detect in all of them an inapplicability that deprives them of their force and value. The familiar instance of mother of pearl and silver turns also, like the rope and snake analogy, upon an error due to a resemblance between a present real and another and absent real. It can have no application to the imposition of a multiple and mutable unreality upon a sole and unique immutable real. In the example of an optical illusion duplicating or multiplying a single object, as when we see two moons instead of one, there are two or more identical forms of the one object, one real, one, or the rest, an illusion. But this does not illustrate the juxtaposition of world and Brahman. For in the operation of Maya, there is a much more complex phenomenon. There is indeed an illusory multiplication of the identical imposed upon its one and ever unalterable identity, the one appearing as many. But upon that is imposed an immense organized diversity in nature, a diversity of forms and movements which have nothing to do with the original real. Dreams, visions, the imagination of the artist or poet can present such an organized diversity which is not real, but it is an imitation, a mimesis of a real and already existent organized diversity, or it starts from such a mimesis, and even in the richest variation or wildest invention, some mimetic element is observable. In other words, dreams, visions, all the phenomena of consciousness are based on experiences derived from a real formation of being. To continue, there is here no such thing as the operation attributed to Maya, in which there is no mimesis, but a pure and radically original creation of unreal forms and movements that are non-existent anywhere, and neither imitate nor reflect nor alter and develop anything discoverable in the reality. There is nothing in the operations of mind illusion that throws light upon this mystery. It is, as a stupendous cosmic illusion of this kind must be, sui generis, without parallel. What we see in the universe is that a diversity of the identical is everywhere the fundamental operation of cosmic nature. But here it presents itself not as an illusion, but as a various real formation out of a one original substance. A reality of oneness, manifesting itself in a reality of numberless forms and powers of its being, is what we confront everywhere. There is no doubt in its process, a mystery, even a magic, but there is nothing to show that it is a magic of the unreal and not a working of a consciousness and force of being of the omnipotent real, a self-creation operated by an eternal self-knowledge. And thus we are back to Satchit Ananda. I think we can put our bookmarks there for this week and perhaps conclude our chapter next week, or if not, then the week after. Tonight we turn to Savitri. I think it's time we read this passage. This is in the Book of Yoga, Canto 3, the book in the Book of Yoga, the entry into the inner countries. So she fared on across her silent self. To a road she came, thronged with an ardent crowd, who sped, brilliant, fire-footed, sunlight-eyed, pressing to reach the world's mysterious wall, and pass through masked doorways into outer mind, where the light comes not, nor the mystic voice, messengers from our subliminal greatnesses, guests from the cavern of the secret soul. Into dim spiritual somnolence they break, or shed wide wonder on our waking self, ideas that haunt us with their radiant tread, dreams that are hints of unborn reality, strange goddesses with deep-pooled magical eyes, strong wind-haired gods carrying the harps of hope, great moon-hued visions gliding through gold air, aspirations sun-dream head and star-carved limbs, emotions making common hearts sublime. And Savitri, mingling in that glorious crowd, yearning to the spiritual light they bore, longed once to hasten like them, to save God's world. But she reined back the high passion in her heart. She knew that first she must discover her soul. Only who save themselves can others save. In contrary sense, she faced life's riddling truth. They, carrying the light to suffering men, hurried with eager feet to the outer world. Her eyes were turned towards the eternal source. Outstretching her hands to stay the throng, she cried, "O happy company of luminous gods, reveal who know the road that I must tread, for surely that bright quarter is your home, to find the birthplace of the occult fire and the deep mansion of my secret soul." One answered, pointing to a silence dim on a remote extremity of sleep in some far background of the inner world. "O Savitri, from thy hidden soul we come. We are the messengers, the occult gods, who help men's drab and heavy ignorant lives to wake to beauty and the wonder of things, touching them with glory and divinity. In evil we light the deathless flame of good, and hold the torch of knowledge on ignorant roads. We are thy will, and all men's will towards light. O human copy and disguise of God, who seeks the deity thou keepest hid, and livest by the truth thou hast not known, follow the world's winding highway to its source. There, in the silence few have ever reached, thou shalt see the fire burning on the bare stone, and the deep cavern of thy secret soul." Then Savitri, following the great winding road, came where it dwindled into a narrow path, trod only by rare wounded pilgrim feet. A few bright forms emerged from unknown depths and looked at her with calm, immortal eyes. There was no sound to break the brooding hush. One felt the silent nearness of the soul. End of Canto 3. Namaste. Jai Ma.